The Life, Teaching, and Legacy of Martin Luther, Chapter 1, Origin, Education, and the Monastery. Martin Luther was born on November 10, 1483, in Eisleben, Germany, to Hans and Margaret Luther. Originally, the family name was Luther. This was later changed. Hans and Margaret probably named their son Martin because November 10th was known as St. Martin's Eve. In time, Hans and Margaret Luther had several other children, both boys and girls. Hans Luther was of peasant heritage, and his work history shows how peasants in the late Middle Ages could improve their place in society. He became a middle-class silver miner and then an owner of several foundries. Hans expected his eldest son to continue improving the Luther family fortune. He was to be given the best education possible and seek a job that would increase the family's wealth. Martin Luther's childhood was not a happy one. His parents were extremely strict. In the late Middle Ages, children were generally treated much more severely than they are today. But even by those standards, Luther seems to have endured an especially hard time. As an adult, Luther would still speak bitterly of the punishments he had suffered as a child. Martin Luther's first experience of discipline at school was no better than the punishments he received at home. He later spoke of having been brutally whipped for not perfectly memorizing his difficult lessons. His grammar school education took place in Mansfeld, Germany. In 1497 through 98, Luther attended a school run by the Franciscan Brothers, an order of monks, at Magdeburg, Germany. As was typical at that time, the school required Luther and other students to go into the town and beg for daily food. From 1498 to 1501, Luther went to school in Eisenach, Germany, where he lived with and was cared for by the Cotta family. In 1505, at the age of 21, Martin Luther earned his Master of Arts degree at Erfurt, Germany. He then planned to enter law school, as his father wanted him to become a lawyer. However, Martin Luther had become extremely concerned about the condition of his soul, whether he would be accepted or condemned before God on the day of judgment. In Martin Luther's view, the path that offered the greatest possible hope of salvation was complete dedication to spiritual matters by becoming a monk. Luther knew that such a decision would enrage his father. The family's financial security and increased social standing was pinned on the hope of Martin Luther becoming a successful lawyer. In July of 1505, Martin Luther was returning to school in Erfurt after a visit with his parents. A sudden thunderstorm arose, and Luther was caught out in the pouring rain. Lightning struck the ground a short distance away from Luther, knocking him down. He feared that he was about to die. In terror, Martin called out to St. Anne, his father's favorite saint. She was thought to be the mother of the Virgin Mary and was the patron saint of miners. Martin said, "St. Anne, help me. I will become a monk." His vow to St. Anne, made in a moment of terror, was to shape the course of Luther's life. After safely returning to Erfurt, Luther was determined to keep his promise. That month, without his father's knowledge and against his father's wishes, Martin Luther joined the Augustinian monastery in Erfurt.